Tomb Raider has been reported to be going full steam ahead into development and has been teased to be revealed later this year. So today I'm going to share my wish list on this upcoming Tomb Raider game. Hey guys, Single Player Universe here, please like and subscribe and let's dive into the video. Tomb Raider is one of my beloved game franchises of all time. I have played the classic games up to the last Revelation, skipping Chronicles and Angel of Darkness. I also played the Legend trilogy, and while not as good as the originals, I enjoyed it, particularly Legend and Anniversary. Since the reboot games, the only Tomb Raider I played in that trilogy was Rise, due to it being the best of that trilogy and looked more enjoyable than the rest, and was nowhere near the 90s classics or the Legend trilogy, though in my opinion it was a good game. The next game is now in full swing due to Crystal Dynamics ending support for Marvel's Avengers. Not much is known about the next game apart from that it will be published by Amazon, and you can check out a video on the Amazon deal down in the description below. So getting to the point, what are the things am I expecting from the next Tomb Raider game? Starting off, Tomb Raider should have a soft reboot rather than the hard reboot it has done twice now. Despite Crystal Dynamics saying they are unifying the timelines to link the 90s classics with the Legend trilogy and linking the reboot trilogy to both, I think a soft reboot would make sense. This is how it would work. The next game could just make the events of the 90s classics canon, and in my opinion they should start from the last Revelation, scrapping all the games that come after it, rather than starting after Angel of Darkness. Or if they are going to unify the timelines, then they could retcon the Legend trilogy story. So basically what I mean is that the Legend trilogy could be the continuation of the reboot trilogy and the 90s classics after that, and the next Tomb Raider could be set after the classic timeline, and we see an older, rugged Lara Croft with the same sassy personality in the classic games. Speaking of Lara Croft, I would like to see her closer to classic Lara Croft, as Crystal Dynamics' 30th anniversary logo showed Lara Croft with dual pistols and a plaited ponytail like in the originals, and at least make her like classic Lara in a way that we fans can say that she is the best Lara Croft we have had in years. But she needs to act like the real Lara Croft. No need for any more family drama and sense of survival. Make her like she is this sassy and sometimes cold woman who loves her adventures and doesn't care about anything else. The gameplay is the other thing that needs to be dealt with. Some of this has already been covered in my video about what elements should be taken from the classic games, and you can find that video down in the description below too. So the gameplay needs to not have these survival elements in it. It is not a survival game, it is an adventure game, and Lara is not some woman who is unarmed and weak that she must survive. She is an adventurer who is armed with a lot of weapons and prepared for all the scenarios that come in the wildernesses that she explores. The other thing that needs to be gone is enemy hordes. Now the reboot trilogy doesn't have large enemy hordes like other games such as Days Gone or Call of Duty, but they are still hordes, and Tomb Raider never was really meant to be a shooter. It was meant to be an action adventure with some combat in it, not just a full shooter with some of the obvious adventure elements from the Tomb Raider franchise. Instead of full enemy hordes that are mostly human, there should be a lot of wild animals and predators, with a few parts of the game where monsters and humans could end up being enemies too. The gameplay element that needs to be brought in though is the acrobatics seen in the originals, allowing for Lara Croft to do the rolls and somersaults to avoid getting hurt by enemies, and would make Tomb Raider more unique, as most games now make you take cover in games rather than allowing you to maneuver around enemies. The acrobatics should be refined to a point where it doesn't look too repetitive, but that is one for the books, Crystal. The other thing that needs to be added is epic boss fights. Boss fights in the originals were hard and difficult, but in the end you always felt satisfied, with some of the most epic boss fights being the fight with Natala, the T-Rex, Pierre and Larson from the original game, and many other epic fights in the sequels. The boss fights in the reboot trilogy are alright, but they're not as dynamic as the originals, hence not as memorable to us compared to the boss fights in the originals. The platforming also needs to be changed with a modernized version of the grid level design. While Amazon mentions some good things that seem similar to the originals, I'm trying not to be optimistic for a return to the original form. Also, the puzzles have to be really mind-bending, and despite Amazon mentioning it, I'm starting to think that Amazon's vision of mind-bending puzzles may not be the original mind-bending puzzles, but may still be mind-bending in a way that it is hard and difficult, but not as hard as the originals. And to even make the next Tomb Raider game be like the original games, Crystal and Amazon should use Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, as that game, in my opinion, in terms of puzzles and platforming, is the perfect modern game that mirrors the original Tomb Raider games in a way that I think of it as a Tomb Raider game rather than a Star Wars game. I would also like to see Tomb Raiding for once, rather than just running in the wildernesses and stealing artifacts from the bad guys who got there first, and instead focus on Lara going into these tombs as part of the main plot instead of making them optional, because it is Tomb Raider after all. Tombs are part of that, and I'm not asking it to be oversaturated with tombs, but it needs to be part of the main plot this time. Globetrotting is absolutely one thing that needs to be added, even though it is one I have gone over before in a previous video. I'm going to say it again, the globetrotting from Tomb Raider 2 and 3 needs to be added into the next game, because the reboot games have kind of followed the last Revelation by staying in one location. The only difference being that the games are not as boring due to the story and the visuals. But take away those things and then you're left with the same boring game that the last Revelation was. And then we have the score, or soundtrack as I like to call it. Since the original games, the soundtrack has never been that good, and my exception is Tomb Raider Anniversary's soundtrack, which was a great soundtrack, not as good as the originals obviously, but still great, and maybe I might have some of Legend's soundtrack involved too. But the original composer, Nathan McCree, needs to come back and remix his soundtracks for the next game and implement the same danger that we felt as we were turning corners and opening doors that we never knew where they could lead to. So Crystal Dynamics hire this guy, and then the soundtrack will be so renowned that everyone will probably buy the soundtrack and play the songs in their daily lives. And one final thing, please check out these two videos you see on the screen, as you will hear my full opinions on some of the topics we have touched on today. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, I have a lot of videos like this coming, so subscribe and I'll see you next time. Take care.